Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and Diablo 4. I had thought things would probably calm down with the game and news once players had hit tier 25 and cleared that successfully the first time, but as it turns out, a lot of things have had to happen for that to even be possible. Like that entire rebalance patch that reduced the incoming damage in there by 20%, massive glyph XP increases, and the tiers 1 through to 9 are significantly easier than compared to when the event actually launched. Well, those higher tiers, especially when we get to like 20 plus, they're literally impossible without breaking the game or farming insane amounts of glyph XP. In fact, it's said right now that tier 25 isn't possible without both. Top Barbarian players who have been pushing tier 25 are essentially damage immune right now, but lacking the damage output to actually clear that last tier. So, how are you going to increase your damage? Well, of course, it's level the glyph to a high enough level. Or also break the mechanics of the game to take aspects from the normal maxes to say a two-hand or maybe amulet max, getting multiple passives at once like key passives and more, even tricking the game into giving you an incredible amount of attack power, so it's pretty funny. What the trick or exploit or whatever you want to call it is, it's called Snapshotting and it's incredibly effective. It appears to be something always in the game, just never abused en masse like we see today, because, well, there was no reason to. Nothing in the game was difficult enough to trick and mess around with the game systems to find out what's possible. Now with the Abattoir being literally impossible without more damage than we can access prior to long periods of glyph XP grinding, people have been searching for new ways to get more damage. Now what's interesting about this, especially to me at least, is the fact that it's been noticed en masse so late into Season 2. With the way that it seems tied to the game's core systems, it definitely doesn't seem like an easy fix for them to do. Well, let's talk about what this actually is and how you do it. There's different kinds of snapshotting. The first one is quite simple and easy to do. Let's take two of the same aspect. We have one version of the aspect on a two-hand weapon, and then another version of that aspect just on a weaker slot. The aspect on your two-hand weapon is naturally higher in its potency than a weaker normal slot. In some cases, it'll double the potential of the numbers. 25% becomes 50% and so on. If you have both of these equipped at the same time, logically the game's going to just focus on one of them, and it'll just choose the one with the higher stats or effect, because that's, how it should work. This leaves you with that second aspect doing the same thing but with lower numbers, basically being a dead slot. So, to snapshot, we are entering a dungeon or instance of any kind, which does mean it works in the training grounds by the way, with both versions of the aspect equipped. As you entered the instance though, the game has snapshot this decision. The bigger stat is in effect. At this point, you can then take off the stronger version of the aspect, put on a different one, maybe swapping your weapon for a different aspect. But because you had a second copy of that aspect already equipped, maybe on a weaker slot like a ring or a glove or something, you've tricked the game. You'll be receiving the stronger version of the aspect, the one that was on your weapon, despite only having the weaker one equipped on your ring or glove or whatever. Through this method, you can technically raise the potency of various aspects as you snapshot them to a two-hand or amulet version of strength. In this case, you'd only be able to do it with two aspects at a time, since you only have your two-hand weapon and amulet to do that with. But even in that example, it's still buffing two aspects beyond the limits of the game and its normal rules. There are some limits though. The trick doesn't work on every aspect. It has to be an aspect that just kind of buffs you immediately, something that gets to work the moment you're in a combat zone rather than an aspect that needs building up first. So as awesome as it would be if this worked with something like disobedience, it doesn't work with that example. The working examples we're seeing very popularly used right now are the aspects like the elements aspect, the one that provides X amount of increased damage to rotating sets of elements, or incredibly, the accelerating aspect. Critical strikes with core skills increase your attack speed by 25% with a weak item slot version, but that's doubled to 50% on a two-hand weapon. If you benefit from attack speed, which is most of us, or you're a build that actually uses accelerating normally, this is extremely worth taking advantage of. Another aspect that actually does this is the new one, the Midwinter Blight event one, known as the Shard of Dawn. A rolling buff of sorts, you get 30 seconds of downtime and 12 seconds of increased attack speed, and then also just an extra 20% increase to your movement speed, which is very nice. The weak version of this can top roll to 35% increased attack speed, while the two-hand version goes up to 70%. So by using the snapshot method, you can get yourself a broken amount of extra attack speed while also getting the movement speed. This then stacks with, say, Ravenous, that vampiric power, which is going to scale your attack speed even more based on movement speed. But there's more to this. The snapshotting also works based on the order you equip items once you're actually in the instance. In that case, you want the item with the higher power. That should be equipped first, then you'd follow up with a weaker item second. With that, it applies the first version of the aspect, and in that case, it'd be the stronger one. Doing it this way can backfire though. Let's say you put on the weaker power first, then equip the stronger power second. it'll use the first one, meaning the weaker power. Technically then, this means you can use your weapon as a constant swap slot to power your weaker normal slots. And yet another version of this snapshotting could be to do with your skill tree. Let's say you enter the dungeon with one key passive in your skill tree going, then you swap to another. It's going to snapshot the original one and then you get the effect of the second one all the same. If these swaps are relevant for function for you with aspects, well, that sounds like it could be insane. Sorcerers are a very good example of that. As Josh shows us in this footage, on his sorcerer, he's able to enter with one key passive going, which powers one of the aspects that he's running. Now in the dungeon, he swaps to a different key passive, getting two benefits from one and also powering an aspect that's using a key passive he currently doesn't have. It just thinks he does because of the snapshotting. It's pretty ludicrous. As showcased recently by Rob2628, you are able to push your attack power to extreme heights using this method. With his optimized build involving Uber Uniques, we're seeing up to 2 million attack power potential. In terms of the attack speed potential you could do with, say, accelerating and the new aspect, you could reach up to 120% increased attack speed from those two aspects alone, which is comical. So yeah, it's pretty busted. It's pretty funny that we've had to go to these lengths to actually push Abattoir, but I also think it's kind of awesome to see players actually experiment and find things like this, and it did give us a reason to do that. It's obvious that the upper tiers are pretty overtuned and were meant to be maybe impossible, but with exploits like this, well, you can overcome those barriers. It's also just an issue with the current state of things. You know, players are changing their gear mid-run quite a lot. Barbs is a great example of this. You're seeing them swap their amulets and tier pushing. If you've got that Uber Unique Seligs, you get massive damage avoidance while that's equipped, but then that means you don't have the amulet slot free for the much more effective DPS-wise Banished Lord's Talisman. That gives you a guaranteed overpower and makes the overpower crits deal way more damage. So you're seeing Barbarians swap amulets mid-run. When they need to survive the incoming damage, they're running Seligs but dealing less damage. But on the way, they're running Banished Lord's Talisman. As long as they can survive the incoming damage, you'd much rather have the better DPS to actually get to the boss as soon as possible. But beyond that, there's loads of other item swapping. Take the incredible unique Tibalt's Will. It's a huge damage increase, but it's also a leg slot, which is a defensive aspect normally. Maybe you need more defenses, so you take that off and put on something else in the meantime. And those are just a few examples. We're seeing the top players swapping 5 to 10 pieces of gear throughout their runs regularly. If you're trying to push the high tiers right now, you're going to want to be maximizing these game mechanics and therefore changing your gear a lot, and a lot of people don't like that. So I actually think there's a very simple and effective way that you could instantly stop players from using this exploit, but if you were to do that now, there would definitely be a lot of pushback. The devs are in a bit of a tough spot where they just won't nerf anything that's strong or fun, resulting in some incredible class imbalance in Season 2. This has been the case since that absolute farce that was the pre-season into Season 1 patch, in which they nerfed so much stuff that players were enjoying about their class and enjoying the gameplay in general, and then suddenly it was really bad and we were all really weak. The pushback was incredible to the point where so many players simply stopped playing the game, and honestly, I don't think anything could be more effective than getting the devs to acknowledge that they're doing it wrong, and that's not how this game should be balanced. So since then, they've gone the total other direction, and they're completely afraid to nerf anything, even obviously broken stuff. So snapshotting, I think for Season 2, it's here to stay. The issue around that then is, what if it comes back in Season 3? So I guess the question is, are they going to be able to fix it for Season 3? Either by doing the pretty intense change that would be no gear swapping mid-combat or once you're in an instance or something, or like a mechanical change where they somehow on the back end, you know, basically make it so the game acknowledges that you've got two of the same aspect on, and as soon as you take the stronger one off, it applies the weaker one. Again, that's very easy to say, but it might be, probably is, very hard to implement that. Why is it so important that it's fixed for Season 3? Well, it definitely makes content even more of a joke. Content that's not really all that difficult. Abattoir is pretty much the only difficult content that's in the game right now. It won't make you some sort of super-powered warrior while you're leveling or working your way even through Tier 3. But once you hit Tier 4, you probably have enough aspects to actually start doing this kind of swapping, and it'll actually have a relevant impact on that later stage, level 55 to 60 all the way to 100. That's where you probably start to see players really doing this in Season 3 if it stays. So in general, it's going to make everything in the game, even including the first time you fight the bosses to get your uniques, it's going to make it significantly easier. Nothing's going to be all that challenging challenging at any stage, even more so than it was in Season 2. Not until they introduce a pinnacle challenge again, like the Abattoir, but we can't expect that until mid or even late season. So you have to imagine they're going to want to remove it one way or another. Will it get fixed in time for Season 3? Or are we going to see it again in Season 3? For now though, that's my talk on snapshotting, how it works and everything around it we currently know. I hope this video has been interesting or useful to you, but until next time, I've been Hollow, you've been you, thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.